It was a chilly autumn night in the Midwest when Jack Reynolds, an experienced truck driver in his mid-40 seconds, set off on his routine haul down Highway 45. The road stretched for miles through dense forests and lonely farmlands, the kind of road that never seemed to end. Jack was used to the solitary nature of his job, the long hours on the road, and the endless monotony of the endless highways. But tonight, something felt different. The air was unnaturally cold for this time of year, and a thick fog had rolled in, shrouding the road ahead. The headlights of his massive rig pierced the darkness, but the thick mist seemed to swallow them whole, leaving only the sound of the engine and the occasional creak of the truck's old tires breaking the silence. Jack had driven this route countless times, especially late at night when the roads were emptier. But tonight the atmosphere felt off, strange, like something was watching him. He dismissed it at first, attributing it to exhaustion, or maybe the isolation that came with driving through forests and fields, far from the bustling cities. He reached for his radio, flipping it on to listen to the usual chatter from other drivers. But instead of the familiar hum of the trucker community, all he heard was a faint static and a low, haunting laugh, a woman's laugh. The sound sent a chill up his spine. He turned the volume up, trying to clear the odd sensation, but there was nothing but eerie laughter that seemed to echo through the truck. His heart skipped a beat. "Probably just a radio glitch," Jack muttered to himself, trying to shake off the unease. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, focused on the road ahead, but his mind kept returning to the strange laughter. The truck's speedometer crept past 60 miles per hour as he accelerated, pushing the truck further down the road. But then something strange happened. He noticed a set of headlights in the distance, moving fast behind him. He glanced in his rearview mirror and saw another vehicle, but it looked odd. The lights weren't as bright as they should have been, almost as if the car was struggling to stay on. Jack furrowed his brow. Must be another trucker, he thought. Maybe he's having engine trouble. But the headlights kept drawing closer, and the faint static from the radio grew louder. Jack's gut tightened as a feeling of dread washed over him. He watched the rearview mirror more closely, trying to catch a glimpse of the vehicle, but it was as though the truck behind him wasn't even moving in real time. Its lights flickered like a malfunctioning bulb, and the static from the radio turned into a more sinister sound, like a distorted voice, almost a whisper. Suddenly, the trucker's worst nightmare unfolded before him. He saw her. A shadowy figure dressed in a tattered, blood-stained white dress appeared in the mirror, sitting in the back seat of the truck behind him. Her long black hair hung like a curtain, tangled and wild, blowing in an invisible wind. But what struck him most were her eyes. Two hollow, black pits void of any humanity. They stared directly at him through the mirror, unblinking, cold, and endless. Jack's pulse quickened, and his hands gripped the wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. His heart raced as he tried to convince himself it was just fatigue playing tricks on him. But then a voice, low and guttural, echoed in the silence. "You left me to die." Jack's blood ran cold as the words reverberated in his head. The voice was unmistakably female, but there was something deeply wrong about it. It didn't sound like a voice at all, it was more like a thought, something that pierced through his mind, and the fear it invoked was unlike anything he had ever felt. Without thinking, Jack slammed his foot on the accelerator, speeding away from the ghostly figure. But no matter how fast he drove, the shadowy woman's image never left his mirror. It was as if she was always there, watching him, getting closer with every passing mile. Jack's chest tightened as the truck's headlights dimmed. He cursed under his breath, realizing that the truck was slowing down, the engine stuttering as if it had a mind of its own. "Not now," Jack muttered, his voice cracking. The truck began to sputter and lurch, and he tried frantically to restart the engine. But the more he fought to gain control, the worse it became. His truck seemed to stall completely. Panic set in. The figure was now standing on the road directly in front of the truck. Her long, bloodied fingers scraped across the hood, leaving behind a trail of fresh, deep marks in the metal. Her face twisted into a wicked grin, and her eyes, those empty, soulless eyes, never left his. She was laughing now, louder, and the sound made his skin crawl. Suddenly, everything went still. The truck's engine roared to life once more, and Jack could hear himself gasping for breath. He slammed his foot back on the pedal, and the truck shot forward. The figure was gone. The woman in white had vanished, leaving only a lingering sense of dread. Jack didn't stop until he reached the nearest truck stop on the edge of town. His hands were still shaking, and his mind raced as he recounted the horrors he had just experienced. He tried to tell the other truckers about the woman he had seen, but they laughed it off. "Man, it's just the road getting to you. You've been driving all night. You probably hallucinated. Happens to the best of us," one of them said, patting Jack on the back as if to dismiss his fear. But Jack knew what he saw. He could still hear her voice in his mind, the chilling echo of her words, "You left me to die." Days passed, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. His mind lingered on the road, on the woman, and on the feeling of her gaze. He couldn't bring himself to drive again. Not yet, not until he had to. The fear gnawed at him, but the need to provide for his family won out. His boss called, reminding him of the long haul ahead. Reluctantly, Jack accepted another route, Highway 45 once again. The night was colder, darker, as Jack found himself back on the same stretch of road that haunted his dreams. He couldn't help but feel as if he was walking in the jaws of something terrifying, yet he pushed forward, hoping that he could outrun whatever cursed this road. But then the headlights appeared again. At first, Jack thought it was just another vehicle, but no. The same thing happened as before. The lights were dim and erratic, flickering like dying embers in the dark. A cold chill ran through his body and his heart rate spiked. This time, he didn't need to look in the mirror to know who was behind him. She was there, the woman in the white dress, but this time she wasn't just in his mirror, she was in his truck. Jack's breathing became shallow. He could hear her, her laugh, her voice coming from behind him. She was in the cab now, hovering just behind his seat. He could feel her icy breath on his neck. "You left me to die. You will pay for your sins." Jack's blood ran cold as her icy fingers touched his shoulder. He tried to move, but his limbs were frozen. His eyes locked on the steering wheel in front of him. His mind raced, but nothing would save him. The truck felt like it was stuck in place, no matter how hard he tried to speed up. Her hand slowly reached toward his throat. In a panic, Jack remembered something his grandmother used to say about old curses. A prayer. Something to ward off evil. He didn't know why, but he started to speak the words he remembered. "Our Father, who art in heaven." As soon as the words left his lips, a strange, powerful force gripped the air around him. The pressure lightened, the coldness dissipated. The laughter grew fainter, almost like it was retreating. Slowly, the weight on his chest lifted, and the terrifying presence was gone. Jack didn't dare stop the truck until he had crossed the county line, but he was forever changed. His hands still trembled, and he knew the woman, whoever she was still there, waiting for the next driver to pass. The next morning, when the police found Jack's truck abandoned by the side of the road, his body was found lifeless in the driver's seat. There were no signs of struggle, but his neck was bruised and his eyes were wide open in a state of terror. The local authorities were baffled by the case, but the locals knew better. Highway 45, it seemed, was haunted by the vengeful spirit of a woman who had died there years ago. And now she claimed the souls of those who dared to drive on her road. In the years that followed, the legend of the woman in white became a story that was whispered about by truckers across the country. Highway 45 was avoided at all costs, and every driver who passed through that stretch of road made sure to carry some kind of protection. Whether it was a lucky charm, a prayer, or simply the hope that they wouldn't become another victim. To this day, they say that if you drive down Highway 45 late at night and look in your rearview mirror, you might just see her, the woman in the white dress. And if you hear her laughter or feel her eyes burning through your soul, you'd better pray for your life, for there's no telling when she will return to claim her next victim. And if you pass that road, be careful. She may be watching, waiting for someone to hear her story, waiting for someone to give her the justice she so desperately craves.